Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's criminal justice meeting. Call to order, please.
Commissioners Brown.
Present.
Fuller.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Herr.
Present.
Mercy.
Present.
Vice Chair Rodriguez. Here. Chairman Little.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Invocation. Bobby Moody, please. Hi, Bobby. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Let's pray. Father God, who is the judge of all the earth, who loves mercy and justice, we come inviting you today. Let your insight flow as these reports are given for how to interpret and adjust to see justice in our community. And Lord, let the weight of justice these carry as peace officers be lifted by your wisdom. Thanking you, Lord, for each one here and in the field for their service in our city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay. Would you remain standing, please, for the flag salute? Mr. Harris.
Put your hand over your heart and repeat with me, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presentations.
Today will be on the new city camera surveillance policy.
Mr. Dorico, can we have the captain from, I told him I'd get him in and out of here. Could we have the captain from Palmdale speak first?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Captain Ron Schaefer. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Good morning. Thank you. This is my first time coming to this meeting. Thank you for the time. Something that we have going on in Antelope Valley is a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice between Palmdale and Lancaster stations. And part of that agreement is that they will do an annual survey. The second annual survey is being released. There is a computer link that we will distribute and make available. We're trying to get as many members of the community to take that survey and let us know how we're doing and how we can be better. That's the first interest, and we'll make sure we get that link to you so that you can put it out. A second note that I would like to make is regarding settlement agreements. I had a chance to go to a conference regarding consent decrees, and one of the most telling points that came out of that is that communities have to define what public safety is. And there's a lot of movements across the country of differing opinions on what that public safety is. What does that picture look like in your own community? And we want to define it for ourselves. In Palmdale Station, I have a strategic plan that I put together. I put one for 2019. I'm preparing one for 2020. And getting a sense of the public of what they want to see. What does it mean? What do the deputies do that makes their community safer? Do you want proactive policing with traffic stops, a term they call stop and frisk? Do you want no custody, no confinement, no prison? Do you want all crimes to be misdemeanors or no crime at all? The public needs to decide what that is. And I'm hoping people can reach out to me by calling me at Palmdale Station or sending me an email and having that dialogue. Set up some venues that we can have that conversation and paint that picture of what does it mean for public safety in the Antelope Valley. Questions?
Any questions? And that information will be sent out, Captain, to individuals when this comes.
We'll work through the groups in the Antelope Valley and try to have those meetings and let them provide that feedback.
I know this morning you did a presentation this morning at the Sheriff Boosters this morning. We were there, so and a lot of that information will be sent to us for dialogue.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cottle.
Just a side note, this is a momentous occasion. Mr. Cottle, first time speaking to the Criminal Justice Commission in 10 years.
It's only taken me 11 years to get here.
11
it's a special moment. Thank you, guys.
It's a big deal right now. And
well,
I just want to let you know, I know
you look very well prepared.
Yes.
Jason, you look very well prepared.
I got my cleanest shirt on.
Chairman Little, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present today. This is an exciting and momentous moment for a number of reasons. One, at least for city manager nerd types, this is exciting. Before you today is one of our STIR initiatives, which stands for Strategic Technology, Innovation, and Resilience. As a city, we've engaged in a number of different programs, policies, and procedures that make us a little more efficient, make us more a little innovative, and at the end of the day, make us more resilient as a community. Today, we're talking about these cameras that go on top of every streetlight. So you are being watched from all four sides right now and being listened to, you didn't even know it. I'm joking, these are duds. But nonetheless, this is what they look like. What we're talking about today is when we do these innovative things and we do this new technology, there's oftentimes things that go along with that, challenges that we face as a city, as a community that we have to have conversations about. In this case, we have these cameras, and we're going to turn it over to Rob from Anycom, who's going to tell us a little bit about how they operate and how they work. But as a result of this new technology, it creates more public policy conversations about how do we use this data, right? These machines basically capture video, they capture data, they capture they travel Wi-Fi services through there. They travel cellular service through there, and they'll talk about the details of that. But as a result of that, it creates public policy issues that we have to discuss as a community. First and foremost is the cameras. Each one of these systems has 4 cameras on each side of this. It will be stationed on top of every streetlight we own. We own about 19,000 streetlights as a community, so 19,000 times 4 is about 80,000 cameras going to be looking at every public space within the community. Those 80,000 cameras looking at public space, we need to identify policies around the services, and understand how we're going to utilize this. Today, we're not only going to share with you what the technology is, we're also going to have a conversation about what your expectations are as a commission, what the community's expectations are as a community, and of course this is going to be going to the city council as it relates to how do we use these facilities. I'm going to start with an introduction, then we're going to talk about Rob and how it works, then we're going to turn it over to Allison to talk a little bit about the policy that we've created and how we're going to utilize these services. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob to talk a little bit about how these things function and operate. Rob?
So I'm Rob Prasky. I'm the CEO and founder of Anycom. And so we're based up in Sacramento. We've got a manufacturing facility in San Jose. And so we make it all here in California. I wish we made 100% of it here, but that's another discussion. A lot of things come from Asia, and that's all part of it. These nodes are little self-contained Wi-Fi hotspots. And so the trick about these hotspots is that they go in the socket on the top of a street light that's already there. So there's a photocell socket that lives up there, and that turns the light on and off every day. So what we do is we just take that photocell off, and we place this unit up there, and we twist it in place. This unit does the same thing, turns the light on and off every single day. It also does some more advanced controlling. It's got a smart meter in it, and it collects data for how much power was used on the street and those kind of things. We have to do that in order to occupy that spot up there. But the purpose of our solution, of course, is to make money. So we do that by creating a brand new wireless hotspot network up on the streetlights. And so this is a new Wi-Fi solution that will be available in this city. You can go end to end anywhere in the city and catch a Wi-Fi hotspot. It's super high speed, super fast, and that's the future. So with that new wireless network, that allows us to put other sensors inside this box. And so Jason alluded to the cameras that are in here. Because we have this brand new connected wireless network all across the city, it gives us the capability to plug in sensors. So inside this box are 4 Ultra HD video cameras that basically they see out about 150 feet. The reason why that's important is take a look when you drive down the streets after this meeting, and you'll notice uniform spacing all along the street. That's our network, a network of streetlights. And so our goal was to be able to see to the next one, and see to the next one, and see to the next one. Well, what can you see out of these things? That's the key. So our design spec was to be able to see at 150 feet 2 inches. So what's so great about 2 inches? Well, that's the height of a license plate letter. And so our goal was to be able to read every single license plate continuously all the time. So could we create the technology in this box to be able to do that? And so that's what we designed. So we have a system in here that sees to the next street light, and that one can see any plate that's going by, 2-inch letters. So it's a pretty powerful thing that we have here now is a box that can read 2-inch letters. Well, it can also do a whole bunch of other things. It can look at traffic, it can count cars, it can tell you red 4-door sedan and bring that data back to you so no one needs to look at that. So it can tell you a yellow 18-wheel tractor trailer cab, so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. These boxes are smart. So there are computers inside here that can analyze what we used to have to put a person in front of a video screen and think about, oh, did I see this or did I see that? Not the case anymore. So now the computers can do that. They can tell you things. There's 150 people at this intersection. It's either really busy or there's an issue with a crowd or whatever. We can count. So we can count 150 people. We can count 4 bicycles. We can count 8 cars. We can count 3 tractor trailers, all in this box. So all that stuff that I just described happens here. It doesn't happen at some big server facility or server farm. It's inside the box. So inside with these computers is just like your home computer or your laptop or whatever is a little storage card. And so there's just a constant DVR that lives in here, and it's just recording. So it's not to be used for anything. It's just if you ever wanted to get at this, you could. So it just records in a loop all the time. So it just gets erased and erased and erased. So how long does the data live? 28 days. So 28 days worth of data. So if you need to go and check something out, you want to check within 28 days. Otherwise, it's erased. So, and all of that's configurable. So it's pretty powerful. So we talked about the image sensors. There's also a little itty-bitty pinhole on all 4 sides of this thing. Behind that pinhole is a microphone. That microphone is listening for discrete sounds. So we can hear anything you want to tell this box to listen for. For example, we can hear a gunshot. A gunshot has 2 audio signatures with it. It's got a shock wave and it has a muzzle blast. If you put those 2 audio signatures together, it's a 9mm semi-automatic, and I can tell you the make, I can tell you the model, I can tell you the direction of the velocity of the projectile that came out of it. So I can give you triangulated information because it's on every street light. So you're talking about not only 80,000 cameras, 80,000 microphones that all heard it a little bit louder or a little bit softer. So now what we can do is we can triangulate exactly where it came from. The split second it came from there. So if you know that, we can send a piece of information to a 911 dispatch center. Hey, there was a gunshot exactly there. If you have the policy in place, and I don't know if you will or not, oh, well, let's just go look at the DVR inside here. Let's rewind it and see what happened before that happened. Pretty powerful stuff. So sensors are part of this wireless network. So I don't just want to stand up here and preach to you, but answer any questions that you have. So I'm just giving you a broad overview of what this device is out on the street. Questions?
I have a question. Has this device been used anywhere else?
Oh my goodness, we have been in the piloting phase in several cities for about 3.5 years. So this is deployed downtown San Francisco. City Council will be making a decision, we hope, in December to go on every single street light, 40,000 of them. This is deployed in downtown LA as a pilot project. This is deployed in with the utility companies. This is deployed at LADWP, using these sensors to look for fires and smell for smoke. We actually have sensors that can smell. So we can see things before it happens. So it's all over. It's in Yuma, Arizona. It's we've been all over. We're just starting to enter into full city deployment contracts now. So that's what's happening here at Lancaster.
So how this is being used would obviously be policy of the city of Lancaster. We have a draft city camera surveillance policy that I know will be discussed separately, I'm assuming. Questions that I have to do with the technology and the security of the technology, because I think that you look at something like this. I look at it as a private citizen,
Yep.
but I'm also a business owner, and as a business owner, I would love to have them up everywhere. What happened at this time, and to have as much coverage as possible. There's so many things that happen that you miss and you wish you knew better, and if you could enforce the laws by having better data, I'm 100% for it. Private citizen, I've watched maybe too many crime shows, but how people are tracked, and that is obviously a concern. I think that who views this, when, and under what conditions, I think is going to be the primary concern, and that's going to be addressed by policy. So, the enforcement of that policy is going to be key. But I have to say, when I hear public Wi-Fi access, I think of all the warnings that I have gotten forever, even from my phone when I'm in a Starbucks and it says, this is not a secure site. Would you like to continue? And why? Because someone hacks that and then gets the data of everybody else that's on it. Would be a concern. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to know how that will be prevented, because you're mixing two fruits in this basket, so to speak. I mean, you're saying, to pay for it by Wi-Fi. I certainly know in my business I don't have public access to our secure information. So would the two be separated? And along with that, if you can just screw it on and it works, that means you could probably screw it off and steal it. So if you have those cards that are on there, mm-hmm. and you have someone with a nefarious purpose in mind, all of a sudden has 28 days of data of, gee, I really think my spouse is cheating, so I'm going to see every license plate that comes along here so that I can take care of that guy. So those are the things that I'm worried about, is how is it secured, how is that data stored, and the rest of it I'll leave to policy, because that's going to be important on the side of this.
Let me see if I can stack up your questions. So, I've got a short retention span. I'm a technologist.
I wrote them down.
Single focused. So let's see if I can do it. First, let's talk a little bit about the security. This is a fully encrypted 2048-bit device. Highest level that has been achieved so far. So it's uncrackable. It hasn't been cracked yet. So they're same compression and security mechanisms that the military uses for their communication. That's what's happening in here.
So are you talking about the storage part of it, or are you talking about so
all of it?
When you're talking about trying to get in and access what that is seeing, hearing, gathering,
not
storing, it's all the same technology that you're describing.
Fully encrypted. And then there are two devices in here. So I don't want to mislead you. Those functions are separate. There is a Wi-Fi device inside this box that provides Wi-Fi hotspotting. And then there are the computers that run the sensors and the technology and all that, which is separated. So that's why it's sort of thick like this. So there's multiple computers inside this box that are completely independent, but fully secure, fully encrypted, traveling not on the public right of way. So they're all secure.
So for my non-technical brain, you're saying that basically if I'm going to be signing on to the Wi-Fi there, it's completely different from how that machine would be communicating with, let's say, the sheriff's department.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so it's like having, you've seen poles everywhere where you see something clamped on here, and then you see something clamped on up here, and another device clamped on way over here. So multiple technologies that have previously been clamped on poles just shrunk down and put inside the same box, but yes, independent. So let's talk about stealing it. We haven't had one stolen yet in 3.5 years. Why is that? Well, not enough of them out there yet. However, we know before you're coming. So we've seen you on the street. If you attempt to get within 40 feet of this device, that is a trigger. So before you can ever figure out how you're going to climb up 35 feet up on the pole, let's say you have a bucket truck or whatever, we're going to detect your bucket truck. We're going to detect you lifting up to get near our device. And we're going to have notified somebody to go take a look. Hey, we got a proximity alarm. Somebody's getting close to this device. You want to grab the video? You want to see who it is? We could do that if you have policy in place to do that. So we have the tools to detect you before you ever got here. But even if you stole it, good luck. You know, it's never been the technology inside. You know, we're talking military-grade security encryption, never been hacked, never been broken so far. Let's say one day they do figure out how to do that. This is field upgradable over the air to the next level of encryption. So it's something that our whole business is developed around. It has to be. Otherwise, we're not in business. So we have to stay engaged in continuing to develop. I hope that helped.
Well, oh, yeah, immensely. I think you never assume that something can't be done in terms of, you'll see me coming, I immediately think of the ninja suit and covering up my license plate. So, I mean, someone's going to figure out how to do it if it's worth their while to do it.
That's right.
So, to me, the more important part of that is that if they did it, they've got a box that they can't do anything with.
That's right.
And yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Cool.
And if it was done, could it be erased at that time?
So there are protocols in place that if this has a GPS in here, if this is powered outside of its fixed known location, it's a brick. It does nothing. It's totally non-functional, including all the memory and all the data that goes with it.
Is that what they use to send those sessions on Mission Impossible? Automatically destruct.
And you're pulling them all out, aren't you?
Been watching that for a long time.
He's bringing out the ninja suits and ninja, you know. Mission Impossible. That was a good program.
Yeah. Mr. Phelps.
What is the cost?
That's a really good question. Depends on the contract. So the cost for this city is this: nothing, zero. So
my mom always told me nothing's free. So why?
Yeah, you're actually going to lease the top of that socket to me, so I can go make money off it on the Wi-Fi side. So that's how much it costs. It costs you a lease of the top of that photocell socket so we can go deploy a new Wi-Fi network to make money. And we're going to split that back with the city. So if we make $1, part of that dollar comes back to the city. So my investors are willing to front the cost, which is it's a little over $1,000. So, we're going to spend, oh my God, we're going to spend $18 million, well, almost $19 million on Lancaster. Everybody would think, oh, you're crazy. However, Lancaster is going to have the slickest, fastest wireless Wi-Fi network. So why wouldn't you want to live here if you could be connected? All the young kids can be connected.
So is that pretty much what you're doing in the other cities you're in?
Depends. Cities that have a lot of cash in the bank have a different business model. So some of those cities pay for this, and we do our split back with the city at a lower rate. So just depends. We're flexible. We don't care.
And who will have access to the information that's collecting?
Yeah, so that's, first off, does it collect? That's city
part of the policy.
That's policy. Yeah, so they'll get into that. So this device has the capability to turn everything on or off, every single device that's inside the box. Camera on, off. Microphone on, off. Storage on, off. So on and so on and so on and so on. Policy.
The other cities that you're in now, was there a significant reduction in crime by any means?
We are in the pilot stage, so where these units are deployed, I guess you would have to talk to them. I can't pass, they won't pass that data.
I mean, one of the things that's really attractive is the
Love it.
capability of law enforcement using it.
Everybody loves this device. No one hates it. Everybody wants it. So it's great for us. I think we got a business, So we've had nothing but positive results so far. That's why we're excited.
We like free, but what about the maintenance issues?
Great question. What happens if it breaks? Who's responsible? We are, because we're making money on this device. We're going to provide a lifetime warranty, lifetime upgrades. If new Wi-Fi or new sensors become available, we're going to pull this thing out, throw it out, and put the new device up there because we can make more money. So it's us. Yeah. We're going to make sure it's up, running all the time. Yeah. So we test it down in the desert, down in Yuma. We also have these in Cleveland, right on the lake. So we were there for the police department, watching for an event that didn't happen, but watching for the RNC fiasco for that city. So we were the eyes and the ears of where all the commotion was for that convention. And so those nodes are still running today in very harsh environment. Yep. Cool.
So I think this is fabulously interesting. I'm really happy you're here, Jason. I appreciate that you brought him here to give us this information. And somebody in the city had the foresight to see that this was coming and get you guys involved, which I think is just terrific. Yeah. I have lots of questions, but
I'm here.
And since my attention span, and I don't even have the technologist excuse for poor attention span, is there a website where this could be, a lot of this information could be reviewed, and just from my own curiosity point of view?
There is a private website.
Happy to give it to you.
Yeah.
Okay. The 28 days storage, is that a number that has to do with the technology inside the box? I mean, clearly the storage, you mentioned it doesn't have to do with servers, but clearly the information could be stored on servers, and it's cheap to store information. So I'm thinking of situations where, obviously, in an acute crime situation, the 28 days might suffice, but there are lots of situations you can imagine where you'd want to review what happened 6 months ago and see if you can improve your crime detection, for example. Is there the potential for that, and is that something that clearly you've been thinking about?
We're already working with the city of LA to integrate exactly what you're talking about. So they've got a massive video server storage data facility that today we are integrating with so that they can pull this information directly into something that they're already using tools for to do exactly that. So this platform is open. Either it's in the box or it's remote. You know, those are tools that a city would invest in, or maybe you already have them, I don't know. So it is capable of plugging into other systems.
Would a homeowner be...
Also, the policy sets 28 days. The capability is probably greater than that. But the policy we're talking about, we've limited it to that capability. But you have the authority or the ability to kind of modify that depending on what you see as maybe essential. We've limited it just because we think that's the best way to go. If you see other things that are in this policy that say that doesn't work, I think we have the opportunity to be a little more flexible about that, right? But this is right where we're at now from a policy perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So not so much in terms of crime detection, but how does this technology overlap with cellular technology?
Good question. So you've heard a lot about it. So you've heard about 5G this and 5G that, and now you're starting to hear about, you know, next generation of Wi-Fi and where is it all going? What's happening with all this? We believe that the technology that's inside our box is called Wi-Fi 6. So you're just going to start to hear about it now. So, you know, check out Wi-Fi 6, look online and see what it is. But it is super high speed that carries phone calls. So we believe that actually we're going to obsolete 5G, and 5G is not even on the street yet. So it's just an evolution of technology. So
the homeowner would be possibility to this Wi-Fi.
Improving their signals.
Improving their signals.
That's right.
Not replacing.
We'll see. Yes, this can handle phone calls. This can offload cellular calls. Wi-Fi and internet is already carrying every single phone call we make is 50%. Guess what? It's carried over Wi-Fi or the internet. So half of every single call that you make today is carried over Wi-Fi or the internet already, independent of these. We think 100% will be. So we'll see.
Wow.
And we're sitting there as a new device. Hey, you know, this cellular service doesn't work so good over here. We're going to solve that problem everywhere. So I think we got something.
Good. Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate that.
Cool. Actually, a couple questions. What do you charge members of the public right now to purchase your services for Wi-Fi?
Great question. So depends on a contract with the city. So let me describe what's happening in other cities. It's a simpler question. In some cities, they're actually the ISP where they provide the internet connectivity, and they may offer it for free. They may charge their residents of their city $75 a month or whatever. There's a very close city that is getting ready to announce something. I can't say anything to you that is doing exactly that, and the foundation of their platform is our technology. So the city may charge directly. The city may have nothing to do with it and let the providers use this. So let's say we have a contract here in this city with Spectrum, so Spectrum can use this if they want. Well, guess what? 19,000 brand new Wi-Fi Spectrum hotspots all of a sudden appear. So if you're already a Spectrum customer, perhaps they'll charge you nothing. Perhaps they'll charge you $5 more. We're agnostic to all that.
So you don't. So your company doesn't sell the service directly to individuals?
No, okay. we pass it through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. The other question. Notice that the video and images recorded will be the property of the vendor. Are there limitations to make sure that you can only provide it to law enforcement in the city?
It's another great question. And those again, are policy questions. So we have contracts that are similar in other cities but different. We've got contracts that sit out there that say that the data that lives here nobody owns it. The company doesn't own it. The city doesn't own it. Only when there is a request for data from this device does it become someone's property. So that's all. Those are all policy questions.
Okay.
So again, we're open to however it works.
Okay. And I guess my other questions are more policy-based, so I'll reserve that question and then my next one for when we are having that discussion. I assume that's coming up next. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
So obviously we want to look at specifically how the city benefits from this. And Rob talked a lot about the technology and how it works. Obviously this is the way we structure the contract, or where we're structuring the contract, or we're in negotiations as we speak. This is free to the city. I guess there's nothing for free. This is actually a revenue generating opportunity for the city as it relates to leasing out those facilities on top of our streetlights. As a result of that, it does a number of different other things as well. Operationally, the efficiency of our lighting system is challenged. Right now we have a dumb system that when the sun goes down, the light identifies the sun's down and the light turns on. Right? It's just based on a photocell. When that light goes out, we don't know it until somebody calls us and says your light's out. Right? If somebody hits it with a car, it gets knocked down, we don't know it until somebody calls and says your pole's knocked down. So a lot of these things now with this system on top of it allow us to do this remotely. So if one of our light is out, this system will know our light is out, and we'll send out somebody to replace that street light. If the street light gets knocked down, it'll alarm us and say the street light is knocked down. So as much as we talk about the criminal justice benefits, we'll talk about it a little bit. From a standpoint of operationally, as our crews outside in the field, this is going to be far superior to what they're doing now today. So there'll be a lot more efficiency in that. We talked about the private Wi-Fi network. As we look to, when we talk about strategic technology, innovation, resilience, we see eventually we're going to be driven around by cars. All those cars that are driving us around are going to need to be communicating with systems. Wi-Fi systems, telecommunication systems of some kind. In advance of this, we'd like to think that we're ahead of the game, knowing that wherever you drive in the city limits, your car is going to be able to communicate with an outside entity that allows you to know where you're at in the world. These are just futuristic technology, and having that system today allows us not only that capability, but better communication capabilities for our schools, for our students that may not have limited access to internet, a number of different things, and improve cellular coverage. Faster emergency response, obviously this from an emergency perspective, not only disaster preparedness, but the emergency response that Lee and the Sheriff's Department have to do is going to be an immense improvement. And the reality is, when you ask about criminal justice, I think Drew mentioned it, is if you're walking out of somebody's house with a TV, we're going to see you. If you get in a car and drive down the street with that TV, we're going to see you on every street in which you drive. Right? We're going to be able to zoom in and find out your license plate. We're going to zoom in and see your face. Right? From a criminal justice activity, one, it's certainty of apprehension is key, right? You guys all know this. And two, a deterrent, knowing that you're going to be apprehended if they see you, right? We're not asking you to stop committing crimes. We're just asking you to stop doing it here, right? And if you do it here, you're likely to get caught because of these machines, and that's the reality of it. We're going to have less congestion. They have traffic counters in here. They have congestion mitigation technologies. And when we talk about congestion mitigation, there's opportunities in traffic that allow our systems to communicate with each other. If this is functional and operational down the road, we're going to have technologies that will know you're waiting at a stoplight. We'll know that the queue is coming. We'll know all these different things. We know the event is letting out. It'll allow us to modify our traffic signals, stuff like that is still on the forefront. Cleaner streets. The video analytics associated with this. Now, if you think of video analytics, the camera is just a camera. All this does is sees, right? There's video analytics behind that we can install that take this information and once a month take a snapshot of a picture even and allow that analytic to say, is that stop sign still there? Right? It'll be able to identify a stop sign. If that stop sign's knocked down, it'll be one day it'll say that stop sign's gone. It was here yesterday, it's gone today. Right? It'll allow us to understand that stuff. Just on our street side, we see an illegal dump site. Right? We can spot illegal dump sites and say there's now an illegal dump site there that wasn't there the day before based on video analytics. So a lot of the stuff is coming, things that we can do with this that we've contemplated. But it is just a superior opportunity for the city of Lancaster, frankly. I think it's a game changer, not only from a telecommunications perspective, but a public safety perspective. And coupled with people looking at these facilities and then enforcing our laws, I think makes our community far safer than it was yesterday, frankly. So with that, obviously the policy discussion, Drew, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to...
ask a question about, because I noticed in the policy it authorizes city staff to request the video and images for investigation in criminal activity, but it doesn't mention traffic congestion, traffic collision, or emergency response.
Right. Absolutely. And that's one of those things that we need to take a peek at. And the opportunity that you bring up, and we'll look at that, and I'm sure Allison will address it because it's apropos, I think you're right. And, this conversation about how long it's going to stay, things of that nature are all policy driven, and there is no rules, right? I don't want to say we make our own rules, but the City Council has freedom in this. You have freedom in identifying how we use these cameras and what we use them for. So those comments, Allison, we'll turn it over to Allison right now to talk about the policy, but absolutely, from a disaster relief perspective, from traffic, you're absolutely correct. If this policy, by its written, limits that, we need to expand that, and that's your call. And with that, I'll turn it over to Allison. Talk about the policy specifically and how that relates from a legal perspective.
So, Jason, I really appreciated this presentation. If this is what we waited 11 years for, it was well worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Little, Commissioners, Allison Burns, City Attorney. So before you for discussion and input and revision is a draft policy to discuss how to treat the data and information that will be collected, monitored, and possibly retained from the locations of these cameras throughout the city. These cameras will be placed in the public sphere, pointing at locations that are within the public domain where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. That's to address some of the privacy concerns some folks may have about cameras being located throughout the city. The city will have approval rights all over each camera location, so making sure that policy is adhered to. And in fact, the city will be doing the installation itself or through a vendor of its own. So we definitely will have control over where these cameras get located. Presently, we have set up a policy to record video only, not record sound. So not listening to people's conversations, but though we may not be recording sound, we can still capture the, for example, gunshot. We just aren't recording it. So the sound waves come in and we alert that there has been a gunshot at X location with a trajectory in Y location. We're not recording audio under the policy as presently written. The technology on the boxes, as a gentleman mentioned, are retained for 28 days. As a routine matter, the data that will be transmitted to the city is traffic counts and pedestrian counts, and then with the ability for the city to request in writing other data pertaining to criminal activity. And as noted by Commissioner Mercy, we may want to expand that from what it's currently written, which is criminal activity only, to address such things as traffic collisions, emergencies, disaster relief, and things like that. So I take that comment well and will incorporate that with the general consensus of the Commission into the policy. I think that's a good comment. Once the data is transferred, or the recordings are transferred to the city, they will become into our ownership and possession. We will control where and when they are released, subject, of course, to the requirements of law. If we are subpoenaed, we would have to hand them over. If we have possession of them and we get a public records request, we would need to hand them over unless it's accepted from those requirements. The policy is set up, of course, to address unauthorized access or use of the recordings or unauthorized distribution, which would subject folks to immediate action, including but not limited to civil and criminal penalties. So we want to make sure that nobody is messing around with this data, messing around with these recordings. We want to avoid situations where people are using these recordings or these images for purposes other than the legitimate purposes of law enforcement, emergency response, disaster response, things like that. So that's how we've got it set up right now. I really welcome your input, your comments, your changes, your questions. I'm here to help walk through the policy and address any concerns you may have. Silence.
Can you talk a little bit more about protecting the images from in terms of privacy and other and outside access? Obviously, there's many things that, and rightfully so, that the public has access to that comes into government possession, as they should. However, would want to make sure that that the rest of the public's privacy is protected.
Correct.
Can you expand on that a little?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just asking you to just explain that a little bit.
Sure. One of the reasons that the policy is set up the way it is, where we don't get the recordings unless we request them, is to keep out of our possession and therefore out of the scope of things that can be requested by a public records request, all the images and all the recordings of all the cameras all over the city. We're concerned about folks with nefarious purposes wanting to get a hold of the video, of how the bank runs its security, right? When do they have shift changes? When does Brink show up to collect cash, or the spouse, as Commissioner Fuller mentioned, the spouse who thinks their spouse is cheating on them and they want to go get that guy and track that license plate. So in order to keep it out of the public records requests risks, we want to make sure that we don't possess it. It is not ours to use, own, control, maintain. Therefore, it's not a public record. If someone requests it, we don't have it unless we've pulled it for a specific purpose, that natural disaster, that criminal activity, and all of those things. And the criminal activity evidence, that is exempted from the Public Records Act. So in those situations, we would have a specific governmental purpose behind requesting those particular images and recordings, and only in those circumstances would we possess it, and would it be subject to third parties requesting it from us.
I personally, I like the idea, at least initially, of limiting the availability as you described it, as it's described in policy. So I like the way that the policy is written from that perspective, only because it's new, hasn't been tested, the lawsuits haven't come up challenging it, all the things that I know that keep you awake at night. I'm assuming I don't have you on camera, but
I'm so glad.
But until you start, getting a little bit of experience, maybe you're better off being super cautious, what I'd say, and then you can revisit the policy.
Absolutely.
The one thing, though, that I have to go back to my investigation discovery television watching binges, is that 28-day window. Honestly, if it's something that is happening over a period of time and you're just now being able to connect the dots and need to look back, that's a small, for some cases, a very small frame of time. Even though you're not accessing it, maybe you could access it if it were stored in some way that if you needed it later, you could look back on.
Wasn't that something that you could modify that as far as the time frame?
Well, my understanding. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Here it says it's stored 28 days.
Right. So the 28 days is the technology of, as described to us, of the card inside the machine, inside the actual node itself, and these are called nodes. If we wanted to go beyond that 28 days and store beyond that, my understanding is, and please jump in if I've got this wrong, is that it would need to be exported from the nodes to a server somewhere under contract with someone to pay for the costs of retaining a whole lot of data.
Right.
That's a whole lot of data from 80,000 cameras running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And then I guess that once again then raises the area that you're concerned about.
I could say it again.
It brings to the forefront some of your concerns about then that becomes discoverable if it happens to be, say, in City Hall where that's being stored. Yeah,
right.
Okay.
So
it's a technology-driven reason at this point.
Right now it's a technology-driven reason because that's the scope of the retention ability inside these nodes. I my current thought on this, and I've thought about exactly this issue. We don't even know about some accidents and some claims against the city, for example. That's where I come from, claims against the city. These are the things I worry about, among others, of course. Is I don't know about them oftentimes until much later. And so, gosh, would I like to have the ability to go back 6 months, 9 months, and see how the accident actually happened, as opposed to how it's being alleged to have happened, if it involves a city facility of some sort? Yes, I would. One approach to this might be to roll out with this 28 days now and see how frequently we go, gosh, it'd be great to have that data from 6 months ago. Gosh, it'd be great to have that data from 3 months ago. And take it step by step and see how we can arrange it to protect those privacy concerns so that it doesn't become subject to those public records requests that concern me, from a perspective of protecting our citizens and protecting our businesses from people scoping out the business and how it runs its security and things like that. But at the same time, doing all of the things we'd like to do with the data in terms of, protecting the public fisc from claims that are unfounded, or recognizing when there has been a problem and taking steps to resolve the matter quickly. This is where I come from, is from claims perspective, or other issues that we might see that there's a pattern of a problem in a location, and gosh, can we address this? But we can't see that without that data. I think I would prefer at this point to start with the 28 days and then see if there are other ways to address that issue and address it if we need to, and look at what the costs associated with that might be, and maybe to come back and revisit in 6 months, 9 months, and see where we stand. That's my thoughts, just to be clear. That's my thoughts. I'm not stating anyone else's position on this, but that's where I come at this one, and I am amenable to being persuaded otherwise, or being directed, frankly, otherwise.
I'm not sure that I think you're right to draw the distinction between the expectation of privacy and people's privacy. In other words, in the public arena, people shouldn't have an expectation of privacy. And what's happening in the legal system now, both in the civil side and the criminal side, is that a lot of the information that we use in that system is observer information, which is often terribly unreliable, and yet important decisions have to be made off of that. So that's independent of the cost problem of storage, but the privacy issue seems to me not to be an important issue. That is, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say one thing that kind of made me think about it in a different way when I was thinking about, okay, cameras on every streetlight pointing in 4 directions. That's a lot of data coverage. But then I stopped and thought about, well, lots and lots of people have the Ring or the Nest or the other doorbells, right, that point out at the public street from your private property and get your neighbor's house, and from in every direction they get the cars going by, all of those things. People have video cameras on their houses for personal security. This is no different, except it's going to be everywhere. And you don't have control of whether your neighbor has a Nest or a Ring video doorbell. You have no control over that.
But independent of the video capabilities of people's private systems, law enforcement there's always people at the intersection. That is, there's people under the streetlights historically, and so when there's an investigation that the police get involved in, they try and find out who was there at the corner, and they go and ask them questions, and they try and tell the information to the police to the best of their ability, and that often is quite limited. So in that sense, I'm not sure that the people shouldn't have an expectation of privacy under the streetlight.
Correct. In the public sphere, you do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy. You don't. And so on the public streets, you're subject to this type of viewing. So. Any other questions, comments, concerns with the policy? I really, really would like your input if you have concerns, as it's going to be rolling out on on all the streets.
Well, I believe there's a lot of information for us to take in here, as far as commissioners, and make any type of recommendation would be foolish at this point for us to read this information and possibly open this up to the general public in an evening period of time as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
So that we could get some public input.
Absolutely.
So that would be my recommendation as far as this council. I do know that we have a couple cards that I would love to sit there and listen to, but we'd love to table that and say on this item, so we could review this information and open it up and at a date that would fit these commissioners.
Do you propose scheduling, putting together something for the public and notice to the public for a meeting in the evening?
In the evening time, I think, would be great.
Yes, like a town hall meeting.
Yes.
Okay. We can definitely put something together, and I'll run it by for everyone for dates that would work.
Incredible. It's just incredible, Allison. Jason,
Sure.
this is crazy. This is incredible
The technology
stuff.
is not me. Policy. I'm policy.
Well, it's taken Jason 11 years, like Dr. Brown says. He's come up with a great idea.
I'm just curious what the expectation is of the city council if they want to do what we're talking about now is making a recommendation whether we like the policy as it's written. So to say to the city council, hey, there's some glaring errors or some additions, which we've been doing here rather informally, but I think it's been productive. Does that then, is there a sense of urgency? Do we just make the recommendations that we already have and then it goes to the city council to do this type of public forum, or do you want to delay that, so to speak, and keep it before this commission? I mean, I don't know where you'd like to go with it, or where the council would like to go with this.
I think from a decision perspective, we've been directed by the council to work towards this end for this process or this system.
Yeah.
The question is the conversation we're having today is not whether we should do the system; it's a question of how we implement that system.
Right.
Is there any speed at which we need to have to do this? We're negotiating the contract currently. The contract. There's certain parts of the contract that take in the policy, but they're not necessarily the ones we've been talking about today. So I don't think there's any urgency for the contract, and there isn't any urgency from a policy perspective for the council. We've scheduled, in thinking with the council, that we'd do this meeting, and now if we have another meeting, we're going to do the night meeting, and then we'll look to January as the goal for the council to have the conversation in front of the council, but that gives us 2 months to have this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my expectation is the policy that is ultimately presented to the council will take into account these comments we've had today, future comments we may get at the town hall that are, well-founded and really could help the city and protect the citizens as well. So my expectation is it'll look a lot like what this says, but it will be different with comments from whatever source they may be, if they are, make good sense and work with the goals we have in mind.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just from the council's perspective, that we'd like it done as soon as possible, but we want you to tear it apart. We want you to hear from the public. We want you to get the public input. We want you to ask the hard questions. We want you to engage the public. We want those questions asked. We want, you talk about the military software. Can this camera look inside a home? Those are the type of questions we want, asked and answered in the general public. We want those questions answered, but we want you to tear it apart, and then we'll put it all back together in something that the citizens of Lancaster can live with.
Yes, sir. Well, there it goes. And then I think that's the direction that this commission should take as far as having that town hall meeting and putting it on some type of calendar as soon as possible that would work for all of us in the evening time.
But you have speaker cards for this particular thing that you do have to listen to today.
Okay. And just in closing, thank you guys. I think the goal is, at the end of the day, we come back with a policy that you guys are crafting together with us. We don't know everything. You guys have a different perspective than us. That perspective is valuable. Obviously, the council is going to have a different perspective than you guys, but the goal is to make this a community of effort so that at the end of the day, when we launch these cameras and launch this program, that there's a comfort level that from a community perspective and from a privacy perspective that we're going to get the level of protection we want without the sacrifice of privacy, and that's really the goal out of this. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any more questions, or you can take the public comment. It's probably wise.
Any questions for Jason or Allison?
No. Thanks again, Jason. I appreciate it.
Jason, thank you. Allison, thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Mr. David Paul.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and Commissioners, good morning. I'm glad to see Dr. Brown. He's been here forever. Commissioner Fuller was back when I was trying to do a thing called the Human Accountability Project, which was to have either street monitoring or satellite monitoring of traffic so that everyone could just observe traffic laws. Now, I want to go back to the military-grade intelligence. You talk about that in Yuma, Arizona. Is this being tested at the proving grounds for the Army in Yuma? Is that what we're talking about there? Because there is public information about that somewhere on government pages and the like. Yeah, the traffic thing is the one that concerns me, and how we're going to integrate all this. Because certainly if someone is hit in the street, you've got to go get that footage. But being able to control traffic and people doing burnouts and donuts on your street, will any of that be available for prosecution? And that's basically Commissioner Mercy, you had good questions. I was wondering about how it would work with the Spectrum deal and traffic, of course. So those are things that I'm concerned about, how we can utilize it without overwhelming the district attorney with additional filings, and how that'll all work. So it's very integrated. I can see where it's new. We have to work it out. We have to talk about it, and just go with it and see what happens. So thank you for allowing me to talk about that, and I look forward to the next discussion.
David, thank you. It's always nice to hear from you. Vanessa, I know you got a time restraint, and I apologize. So come on up, and we'll. This is all good stuff that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me cut in line. I do have an event I need to go to. Assemblyman Lackey introduced 15 legislative bills this year. 7 made it to the governor's desk. All 7 bills were signed, and 6 remain alive for the next year. They're 2-year bills. So it was a very successful legislative year for the Assemblyman. Among the bigger pieces of legislation signed this year, there was AB 392 and SB 230, which clarifies the standard for use of deadly force and mandates training for all law enforcement. Also signed this year was SB 61, that expands the one handgun a month law to apply to handguns or semi-automatic rifles. Among the biggest pieces of legislation vetoed this year, there was AB 891, which would require cities and counties to provide parking lots for homeless individuals to sleep in their cars safely. AB 538, which requires e-cigarette manufacturers to submit photos and descriptions of its product to the state to help inform parents on what the devices look like to stop underage use. One of the most controversial bills that failed this year was SB 58, which was Senator Wiener, and that would have extended the hours of alcohol sales to 3 a.m. This was a bill that Assemblyman Lackey was very passionate about, spoke on the floor, and really worked hard, and that bill failed. He spoke about his work as a highway patrolman and having to go and inform families when their loved ones were killed in car accidents, and he was certain that if that bill passed, it would result in human casualties. So he's very excited that that's gone. Assemblyman Lackey and 42 other lawmakers have called for a special session to address the ongoing public safety power shutoffs. Only the governor can call a special session, so we'll have to wait and see if the lawmakers will be returning to Sacramento. Should they reconvene for a special session and create a legislative solution, that bill may not become operative until 90 days unless lawmakers include an urgency clause, which would make the bill operative immediately after the governor signs the bill. Basically, our area that the Assemblyman covers is Acton, Agua Dulce. It's been a nightmare the last couple of weeks with the PSPSs. We've had people, they're on a well system and they need electricity to get water. So their electricity has been shut off. They have no water. They're stuck in their homes. We had a gentleman, a veteran, who was on a oxygen machine and he couldn't breathe. And Assemblyman Lackey and Senator Wilk went and rented him a generator because there was no way out of his home, and he was in severe trouble. Also, we've had seniors that are on those CPAC machines, and they're also stuck in their homes. So this public safety power shutoff has become definitely a problem for those areas. So in the meantime, Assemblyman Lackey wrote a letter to the CPUC demanding that the utilities halt all power shutoffs, and he's also signed on to a letter with Senator Wilkin himself to the President asking for immediate assistance by providing personal generators and water deliveries to the local communities. So that's what's been going on. As you know, they are all home. The legislature reconvenes on January 6th, and they've been doing community coffees and roundtables and special events throughout the district, and thank you to the City of Lancaster for partnering with us on several of them. But that's it. Any questions?
Any questions for them? No? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do. I have a question. You want to talk about the shutting the water off in Acton as far as the water trucks for the AB 32?
Yes. Senator Wilk and Assemblyman Lackey wrote a letter asking, I don't know the number of the bill, but basically there's water haulers, there's these trucks that need to be compliant with the laws as of, I believe, January, and they need to, Drew, help me with this, they need to be...
I can give a little
Okay.
background.
Okay.
Vice Mayor is correct. AB 32, which was passed back in 2006, kind of first set the requirement, and what it is required upgraded diesel and gasoline vehicles set emission standards, under the intention to, provide cleaner air. And of course, back then they said, well, 14 years is plenty of time. They'll be able to figure it out, even though the technology didn't exist then. The technology does exist now, but it is very expensive. So in Acton, there are many homes that don't have access to well water, and so they rely on hauled water. Essentially, they come in big trucks with water tanks to come and fill up water tanks, just like many rural homes have propane. These homes have water tanks. The water trucks, it's a thin margin business, and even over the last 14 years, they have not been able to upgrade their vehicles. And now they're basically facing the deadline of where they're being told to shut down, and that would just would make these homes unlivable without water.
It takes them out of business. It's going to cost them at least $100,000 to upgrade to where they're supposed to be, if they can even upgrade, or if they need to buy a new truck, I think it's like $300,000.
Yeah.
So there's 3 water haulers in that area, and none of them can afford to either upgrade or have new trucks. So we're facing a big problem.
Yeah, and it's not that many trucks, and it's a small community, but these are companies with just a few employees, but also not only for those businesses, but for those homes.
I brought it up because of the legislature making all these rules, and it's not our two, but the legislator makes all these rules that they say down the road, and it's all catching up with us, like, the Proposition 47, 57, AB 109, and all that. So I just want the general public to take a look at it and see that it's not just the power to pump the water. They've already got rid of the water for Acton and on what they're creating there. So it's a major problem. So
some would question whether it's a coincidence that the deadline was set 14 years when the legislators are able to serve 12.
Good point.
Good
He
point.
said
Good
it, not
point.
me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much. Mr. Dorico will table.
With your permission, respect to the other presenters today and time, I'd like to table the CMCC presentation to the next meeting.
Okay. We'll take a couple-minute break here to thank the consultants and for being here. So in case you have to be someplace else, we understand. Mr. Cottle, thank you, sir. Allison, I know you're both so extremely busy, so we'll take a couple-minute break here. All right. Has the commissioners had a chance to consent calendar on October 19th? October 9th, 2019?
Approval of minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
We have a second by Commissioner Brown. Please vote. There we go. 501 with Lisa abstain. Absent. Yanni. Sheriff's Department, please. Commission staff room.
Good morning, everybody. I know we're almost out of time here, so I'm going to make this as painless as possible. Okay. So this is going to be the comp stats for the city of Lancaster for the month of September. There it goes. Excellent. Okay, for the month of September, for homicides, no homicides for the month of September. For the month of September, the rapes have gone up slightly to 15, averaging 9. For robberies, we're maintaining an average of 31. For aggravated assaults in the month of September, averaging 79, we're about 83 currently. Domestic violence-related aggravated assaults are going to be down to about 8, averaging 12. For burglaries, we're going to be holding steady at about 66, averaging 67. For larcenies, we're going to be down to 150, or larceny thefts, 150 for averaging 168. Grand theft vehicle, we're going to be up to 69, averaging 53. Arsons in the month of September, down 3. And then this is our hot spots for the month of September. Any questions on this so far?
One thing that's just concerning to me anyway is that if you look at the rapes over the past year, in October of 2018 we were at 2, and I know that it's fluctuated, but you see a consistently increasing trend. And if that's, it's obviously of concern, but if you can give us a little more insight behind that data.
Absolutely. The rapes are, there's no serial rapists, just so we can get that clear. There's no serial rapists in the area. The rapes that you see here are usually domestic related, or they know the person in some way, and they wait an extended period of time to report this. So these reports could have happened in September, but could have occurred months prior. So just so people tend to delay when they come up front, whether they get new information or they feel confident enough to report the rape, they end up reporting it, just so happens, in September, even though the actual event occurred months prior.
So we're not seeing, increase in random rape, so to speak, somebody pulling somebody off the street, that sort of thing?
Absolutely not. Okay. These are all types of rapes where they either know the person, they were involved in some type of relationship of some sort.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And you think also the social changes over the last couple of years where now there's more of a welcoming environment and support for victims to where they feel more comfortable coming forward and to press charges?
Absolutely. Education and understanding what they can report, all of that contributes to that factor. Absolutely.
That's true.
Any other questions on the comp stats? Okay, Crime Commission report for September. Okay, for the burglaries, the previous month we had 75. We were now at 66. For residential, previously we were at 45. We're currently at 35. We're down. And then for commercial, steady. Previous month was 30. We were now at 31. For robberies, the total for robberies previous month was 30. We're at 31. Armed, 12. Currently down to 9. Strong armed, 18 for the previous month. Now at 22. All right, crime prevention sources via social media, public safety announcements, neighborhood watch, and business before breakfast. Our community engagement, we do coffee with the Dep at Crazy Autos. As you can see, we do this monthly. We have community engagement for Cop on a Rooftop. That was at Dunkin' Donuts. One of our newest events that we like to do. We also have our community engagement for business before breakfast. All the community engagements at Dunkin' Donuts and at Crazy Autos all go towards our donations for Special Olympics, which is here locally, which the money goes here locally for the city. And that'll be our Crime Commission report for September. Any questions on that? For our LEAPS report, during September 2019, LEAPS was dispatched 102 times, totaling 25.5 hours providing tactical surveillance, and was airborne providing strategic surveillance for 319.2 hours. The LASD deputies utilizing the LEAPS system has provided significant support to the safety of our community as shown in this month's statistics. This month, LEAPS provided airborne observation and support in the arrest of 16 suspects. LEAPS provided aerial surveillance during the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, DCFS, warrant. LEAPS was used to look for any fleeing suspects and to let responding deputies know of any movement on the property before they arrived. LEAPS is also used to provide surveillance for specific targeted locations. Detectives use the system to obtain aerial imagery and data in evidence-gathering stages of property crimes and crimes against persons investigations. For this month, LEAPS led to 16 arrests, 23 flights and assaults, 11 burglaries and robberies, 12 traffic stops, 34 other offenses like suspicious circumstances, and 6 persons with a gun. Out of the total for the month, 32% involved people, 14% involved arrest and detention, 12% involved property, 15% involved vehicles, and the other 28% was observations only. And that will be the LEAPS report progress for the month of September. Are there any questions regarding that? No? All right, that'll be the report for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Thank you again, guys, for your time.
Any questions at all?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probation Department.
Good morning, everyone.
How you doing?
Good. Pretty quiet month with us over at AB 109. We're still serving about 466 clients, probationers, if you will. Relatively a slow month as we exit the summer months and enter the fall and the holiday season. We had 14 violations or revocations where we took back to court. We had 15 warrants issued from a variety of either non-reporting, which is usually the majority of them. We had some non-custodial sanctions where we had to address some issues, whether it be use of narcotics, testing positive on more than one occasion, reporting inconsistently or not on time as we scheduled. We had, I believe it was 46 new releases where they came in for reorientation or orientation into the program, which resulted in 11 mental health referrals and 13 residential treatment type referrals where we may send them to detox if that's necessary, or we may send them straight into residential active rehab and things of that nature. We had 620 office visits, which is very good. So we're seeing a little bit more than 1.5 on average of them reporting. So we're staying on top of it, which is a good thing. So other than that, we've had, like I said, a pretty quiet month, nothing really eventful. It seems like our numbers are starting to go down in the progress. This is continuing. So we're hoping to do that. We're also trying to coordinate with LA County Office of Education of maybe begin independent studies for the people that are interested in the clientele we service, if they want to continue. Not so much, GED is always a good thing, but maybe to actually complete their high school diploma and things of that nature. So that's still in the talking stages. There's some progress. They're going to need instructors and some of that things, but that's somewhere down the road. And that's all I have for you this morning. Any questions? Concerns?
Nothing.
Very good. Thank you. And I do have to take out, so you guys have a great day.
Thank you. District Attorney?
Yeah, good morning.
How are you, sir?
Let's see. For felonies, we had 110 felonies. That's typical for a month. The misdemeanors are up again a lot, 398. I'm going to wait one more month and see. That's 3 out of the last 4 months. We've had about double the number of misdemeanors. I don't know whether those are traffic or drug or shoplifting type cases. So if I get another high month, I'll look into that and see if I'm showing that we're filing a lot more misdemeanors of a particular type of case. So it's a little unusual, but I'll take a look at more of that next month and see what's going on, if there's something there. The only other thing I did want to mention is it looks like we're going to be losing prison priors, which is an allegation that we'd attached to felony cases for persons that had served a prison sentence within the last 5 years. I believe that's going to substantially impact the amount of time that an individual can get for a case and our ability to resolve cases at an early stage of the proceedings. I'm not sure. I think it's going to have a more substantial impact than maybe people realize. So, for example, you might have an individual who steals a car, is facing 3 years in prison for felony grand theft auto. They've been to prison 4 times, say, in the last 10 years, 4 different prison sentences. That's not that unusual. Normally, that person would be looking at a 7-year maximum prison sentence on a case like that. And so we usually try to resolve it for somewhere in around 4 years. So, just to give you sort of a general guideline, all those 4 1-year prison priors are gone. So instead of a 7-year maximum sentence, the person would be facing a 3-year maximum sentence. I can't really offer 3 years. There's no incentive to resolve the case, so they just want to go to trial. Even on a 2-year with the early release programs that we have, not much of an incentive to resolve the case if you're the defense attorney. So you're probably looking at a 16-month prison commitment to settle the case at an early stage of the proceedings, which means they're out in 8 months or less on a case where they would have gotten 3 or 4 years, so maybe half the time. So that's a significant number of cases that is going to impact our ability to prosecute repeat offenders with multiple prison sentences. So I don't know that there's anything anyone can do about that, but that's more good news in the pipe coming down for next year. So I know I'm always the bearer of good news. The only other thing was that I thought might be able to look at is one of the things we used to have petty theft with a prior conviction. So if you committed a number of petty thefts, at some point they became a felony. That tool was taken away. I don't know if it was Prop 47 or 58 or 109 or one of those. So now we have a lot more petty thefts. I know Mr. DeRico is dealing with some of that with his program over there, but It's resulting in a lot more aggressive shoplifting, which is resulting in robberies. I've talked about that a couple times. So part of the problem is we're stuck with a misdemeanor, which, because there's been some physical force used, doesn't seem appropriate. But the alternative is a violent felony robbery, which also doesn't seem appropriate. So we're having to work with those two extremes, and it makes dealing with aggressive shoplifters, people that are using force on loss prevention agencies, and it's becoming so, or loss prevention officers, it's becoming so brazen that, you know, the loss prevention officers are trying to stop their merchandise from being stolen from the store, and the people don't want to give it up because we can't really do anything to them. So there's physical contact. Sometimes it's minor, but minor physical contact technically makes it a robbery if they're using that minor physical contact to get away with the property. So we're stuck with a petty theft, which is a misdemeanor, and there's not really anything we can do, versus a robbery, which is a violent felony, which seems a little extreme for the conduct. So it would be nice to have something in the middle that's a felony that maybe can be a misdemeanor if they pay restitution and, you know, successfully complete a term of probation to work with there, because right now it's a real problem for us. So I thought I'd bring that up. That's all I got.
You sure you don't have anything else? Wow. Any questions? Or no? Just great news, huh?
The cameras do look very promising, though,
Yes.
from a prosecution
Yeah.
standpoint. So that was very interesting.
Jocelyn.
Thank you. In the interest of time, the camera presentation was fascinating. It did kind of run a bit long. I don't really have anything earth-shattering to report, so I'm just going to turn it over to Lee. I do want to say, however, at some point we might want to think about swapping Mr. Sherwood and I, because I'm always so depressed after he talks that I just really feel demoralized sometimes. Sorry about that.
Lee.
Now I move because I have to go after Jocelyn. But I would say this. Mr. Sherwood's been fantastic to work with. And, you know, as we develop through all these divertible type cases and alternative sentencing, which is really the focus right now, that's the places we're going. As probation spoke earlier about things for GED with AB 109, you know, we're currently developing that program with AV College and Adult Ed for moving those type of issues forward for people to, truthfully, for me, my mindset is take away excuses for not being a good citizen. Okay, being successful out there, the opportunity exists, creating those opportunities. But as far as like with what's happening, especially with misdemeanors, you know, we're aggressively now going out and meeting with most of our store and retail centers in the city to get more of them on this program for this process as it relates to these petty thefts. For example, the contract consultant guys that, and I'll present at the next meeting with them, but even to the point of ridiculous things that are happening with our retailers, like Home Depot, for example. They actually had at an homeless encampment 4 of those heavy flat carts somehow got into one of our retention basins, and a brand new barbecue that still had the tags on it. Okay, and they're allowed to walk away based on policy and issues there to be able to do that. And I think that word spreads, and then we see this uptick in those type of crimes. If we statistically put together all those administrative sites along with the actual cases for filing, that number would be significantly more. But I will tell you that we are having success in the fact that folks are pretty shocked when they see what our administrative fine is as it relates to that and the avenues we can take for collection, which is typically different than the court does. Okay? The court has those same avenues, and maybe that's a discussion we have with the court on utilizing those avenues as well. Because typically, as we've done with restitution in the past, is that's passed on based on an assessment on probation. Probation makes a determination on what the monthly cost would be based on that, and it's ridiculous. We have vandalism cases of $40,000 or more that are repayment agreements of $10 a month, and you can only be on probation 5 years, and obviously we can see what the issue would be there on what that balance is. The other issue is unless you owe the court money, if it's us, there's no violation for non-payment. Okay, understand that interesting fact. So if you owe the court money and you come to the end of your probation and let's say you owe $6,000 back on your fine, the court will demand that payment, okay, or you can go to jail. Whereas for us, it's just open-ended and we have to seek other remedies. So we talk about that all the time. What's the best process for us on the front side of those cases? And what's the impact to get people? Because ultimately, what do we want? To change people's behavior, right? I'm going to tell you, I'm very excited about this camera aspect just from that portion of it. Okay, the fact that it exists and that you can be apprehended and caught and identified, hopefully will have an impact on the criminal element in our community not to commit that crime here in Lancaster. I'm hoping it will have that impact, and then that's something that may be based on the foresight by our city administration and our council to implement a program like that, and as innovative as it is, at absolutely no cost to the city, word will spread, and that will become more of a regional issue. So everyone goes out every day. We have the true intention. We're going to continue to do our job. For the district attorney's office, who I know Mr. Sherwood personally, how he feels about this type of legislation and things that occur and that impact on the court on the backside. And so I think it's valuable for the public, needs to know, just as Vice Mayor Chris brought up earlier, to understand what some of those things that are occurring in our legislature today and what that impact is down the road. I mean, I think the diesel truck one's a perfect example. You know, having that foresight, not understanding the true impact that will have on people's daily lives. So we focus on that from our side and the Public Safety Office at the city to work on those quality of life issues that are more of that low-level type things that the Sheriff's Department, quite frankly, doesn't have the resources or time for, and manage that somehow. So hopefully that has a positive impact in the back side of these cases. The next thing I'd like to do is I will have Christy Slayton reaching out to you individually to go over the consultant report, the preliminary report based on the hybrid model that's going to be coming to you next month as well for presentation and discussion. I want to get you more in tune to what that report says. It's rather lengthy. It's 81 pages long. Okay, it's got some great information in there. Pretty darn excited about the potential for that, and as well as I would like to get your input. Okay, so and then we'll roll that out publicly. That's all I have.
Any questions for Lee? Thanks, Lee. Drew, we're good? Public business from the floor on non-agendized items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agenda that's not on the agenda. Regarding commission business, speaker card may be given up front. I have two. We cannot act on it. You're good, Mr. Paul? Okay. So thank you, David. Mrs. Antonov, and I apologize.
It's okay. I'm not the only one who cannot pronounce it. It's not important thing. Good morning, and thank you all for taking my speech today. Promise to you, and for deep respect, I'll be very short, very brief, and I appreciate your effort to be here. My name is Constanza Antonov, and I am a naturalized American citizen and a legal resident of this community since 1986, when my husband and I established our family and our small electronic business in this community. Ever since then, we've been working daily. We didn't take any summer vacation. We've been dedicated to our family and to bring on the market our intelligence and the products that we already had for sale. However, in 1995, a high-ranking government employee brought us to reality and told us blankly and blatantly that justice doesn't work for us in this community. We refused to believe, and we continued working, and we have documented our work, and patiently we have begun to study the law, the American law, and I do thank you for giving me the opportunity to know the American laws, how they work or don't work at all levels of the society. Unfortunately, we are the first generation of immigrants, and the law didn't work for us. It took us 25 long years to discover that there is a law passed only in 2000 at the federal level, in 2005 at the state level, and 2007 at the county level. That is the human trafficking laws. We personally did the research, and we found out that many of the aspects of this law have been experimented on our young family, a child, a husband, and a wife. We tried to seek legal representation, and we didn't find up today when I speak to you. Therefore, in conclusion of my speech and my husband's speech presented here on January 9th, 2019, I appeal to you, spread the word, talk to a United States judge or even the President of the United States about this case. We have the documents, we have our experience to share with you anytime you want. Thank you for your attention so much.
Ms. Anstey, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Commissioner comments?
I have some. I wanted to discuss something I brought up, I think, at our last meeting, and found out that as a city, the council does have the ability to take positions on initiatives as they come onto the ballot. And has in the past, I think the city of Lancaster was a supporter of Jessica's Law and opposed Prop 47 and 57 when they came up. I think looking ahead to a year from now, there's going to be at least 2 initiatives that I'm aware of that their stated purpose is to roll back some of the policies in AB 109, Prop 47 and 57. And I think it might be worthwhile for us to add to a future agenda a discussion on that, possibly even an additional town hall. I mean, we've seen, unfortunately, sometimes the names and descriptions of the initiatives are not done in the most honest way in order to push a vote one way or the other. So if we can help educate the public as to what those will mean, whether or not the city chooses to take a position, we can at least use this as a forum to get accurate information out to the public as to what those policies have done to our community and the opportunity to potentially roll them back.
Okay. Anything else? Then we will stand adjourned until December 11, 2019, except for we will be having a special meeting sometime in between that period that will be announced. Okay. Meeting adjourned.